You know that moment when you've said everything you can say, when you've tried explaining, reasoning, pleading, and nothing changes? That's when the voice inside you gets quiet. That's when you stop chasing peace outside yourself and realize it's time to take it back. There's a point where the words stop working, where love starts to feel like exhaustion, where every text you send feels heavier than the silence you're getting back. And so one day, you just don't reach for your phone. You don't send that message. You don't explain one more time. You stop. And in that stillness, the whole world shifts because silence is not weakness. It's not revenge. It's not giving up. Silence is self-respect turning into sound. It's your nervous system saying, I can't keep screaming for someone who doesn't know how to listen. Maybe you've been there where you can feel their presence, even when they're gone, where your heart still rehearses conversations that will never happen. And you keep thinking, maybe if I just say it right, maybe if I just wait a little longer, maybe they'll understand. But you've already said enough. When you stop talking, when you stop chasing, something sacred begins. That silence isn't empty. It's full of truth, full of boundaries, full of your energy returning home. I know that part of you still wonders what happens next. Do they miss me? Do they think about me? Will they come back? Of course you wonder, because you cared, because you showed up, because you tried. But I want you to hear me. The silence you just stepped into isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your power. When you go quiet, everything that was hidden gets revealed. Your patterns, their fears, the real balance of energy between you didn't disappear. You reclaim space. And believe me, they feel it even if they don't say a word. Because silence is not the absence of communication. It's the loudest message you'll ever send. It says, I'm done explaining what peace looks like. I'm choosing to live it. And that choice, that quiet, grounded, powerful choice, is what begins the real story. Because now everything changes. Not just for you, but for them too. That's where we start. That's where the 5 stages begin. Let's talk about what's really happening inside them. The person who pulled away, because I know what your mind does when silence begins. It starts building stories. It says, they don't care. They've moved on. I meant nothing. But I need you to hear me. That's not the full truth. Avoidance, they don't leave because they stopped feeling. They leave because feeling starts to overwhelm them. They don't pull away because they stopped loving you. They pull away because love starts to feel like danger. See, your nervous system and theirs speak 2 different languages. Where you crave closeness, they crave air. Where you feel safety and connection, they feel safety and control. When you reach for them, they don't see comfort, they see exposure. They fear that if they let you too close, they'll disappear inside the relationship. And that's the hardest part, to understand. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect themselves. But in the process, they end up hurting both of you. Because when someone lives their life in protection mode, they don't experience connection, they experience threat. Love becomes something they have to manage instead of something they can rest in. So when you stop contacting them, you're not just creating distance, you're taking away the one thing that allowed them to hide from their fear. You're removing the chase. And suddenly, all that control they relied on collapses. They tell themselves it's a relief. They tell themselves they needed space. But underneath that calm exterior, their mind starts running. Because for the first time, the silence isn't coming from them, it's coming from you. You just interrupted their entire pattern. Their avoidance worked until it didn't. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because now they have to sit with themselves. No text to ignore. No calls to decline. No maybe later to hide behind. Just them and the echo of your absence. And this is where the story starts to unfold, not in chaos, but in clarity. When you understand this, you stop taking their silence personally. You stop interpreting distance as rejection. You start to see it for what it really is. Fear, not failure. A defense, not a declaration. And once you see that, your power comes back online. Because now you're not reacting to the behavior, you're understanding the psychology. And from that understanding comes peace. They aren't villains. You aren't broken. You were simply two nervous systems trying to find safety in different ways. But when you stopped reaching out, when you went silent, you unknowingly gave both of you the chance to face the truth that love built on chasing and withdrawal isn't love at all. It's survival. And silence is the first time that survival finally stops running the show. That's where the 5 stages begin. That's where the illusion starts to crack. And it begins with the very first one, the illusion of relief. Let's start with the first stage, the illusion of relief. When you go quiet, the avoidance first reaction isn't pain, it's calm, relief. And I know that hurts to hear, but stay with me because it's not the kind of relief you think. It's not joy. It's not indifference. It's exhale. It's their nervous system unclenching from what it perceived as pressure. The same closeness that made you feel safe made them feel exposed. So when the messages stop, when your energy pulls back, they finally feel air again. And that moment, that first breath, feels like control. They'll tell themselves, finally, space. They'll dive into distractions, work harder, scroll longer, keep moving. And for a little while, they'll convince themselves they've escaped the tension. But here's the truth. You can't escape what's inside you. Relief isn't peace. It's just silence sitting on top of anxiety. And soon, that calm starts to crack. Because even though their body feels safe, their heart starts to notice something's missing, the predictability of your presence, the rhythm they thought they didn't need, the constant reassurance they said they didn't want. See, avoidance is a game of distance control. They want just enough closeness to feel connection and just enough distance to feel safe. But when you stop playing, the system breaks. There's no longer a dance to manage. There's just silence. And that silence becomes a mirror. They'll try to fill it, not with you, but with noise, new faces, new projects, anything that reminds them they're fine. But the more they distract, the more that echo follows. Because the nervous system doesn't lie. It knows when something meaningful has shifted. This is why I call it an illusion, because the relief isn't real. It's just the first stage of processing loss. The ego says, good, I'm free. The body whispers, something's missing. And it's only a matter of time before that whisper gets louder. Now, here's where most people make their first mistake. They sense that calm and they panic. They think they're happy without me. I need to remind them what they lost. And so they break the silence not because they want connection, but because they want relief from uncertainty. But listen, the silence isn't punishing you. It's protecting you. Because if you break it here, you interrupt their awakening. You snatch away the one thing that's about to teach them the difference between freedom and emptiness. So don't chase. Let the illusion do its work. Because that false peace they feel right now, it's not the end. It's the setup. The human mind always returns to what it hasn't finished feeling. And when the numbness starts to fade and the quiet starts to echo, that's when the next stage begins. The curiosity, the pull, the moment they start to look back, not because you reached out, but because the silence finally reached them, after that illusion of relief fades, something subtle begins. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, but powerful. Curiosity. This is the stage no one talks about because it doesn't look like what it is. You won't get a message. You won't get a call. You won't see the big I miss you. No. It shows up in smaller ways, almost invisible ones. They'll check your page. They'll scroll a little longer. Maybe they'll listen to that song that used to remind them of you. Maybe they'll look at your name in their messages, but never hit send. And you'll feel it. You'll sense it. Something in your gut will whisper, they're thinking about me. And you'll be right. But that's not your cue to reach out. It's your cue to stay grounded. See, curiosity is the mind's way of easing back toward what it fears. It's the bridge between distance and desire. And when they start wondering about you, That's not them falling back in love. That's them testing the safety of the silence. They're watching to see, are you okay without them? Did you really move on? Did your energy change? Because if you stayed centered, if your calm didn't collapse when they pulled away, that registers in their nervous system as safety. They can feel it, even through the distance. But if you react, if you pose for attention, if you send that just checking in message, you tell their system the opposite. You confirm the old story. Getting close equals losing control. And just like that, they retreat again. This is why stillness is your power, because your energy in silence teaches louder than your words ever could. You're not trying to show them you don't care. You're showing them you've changed what you tolerate. You're not angry. You're not cold. You're anchored. Curiosity is where the scales start to shift. For the first time, they feel something new, uncertainty. They used to be sure that you'd reach out. Now, they're not so sure. And uncertainty is the one feeling they don't know how to control. So what do? They hover. They linger. They test the energy from afar because they need to know if it's safe to come closer. And this is your moment of quiet power, the space where emotional roles begin to reverse. Because while they're questioning, you're healing. While they're watching, you're rebuilding. While they're tiptoeing around their own fear, you're standing in calm certainty. They think they're observing you. But really, the silence is observing them. And soon, that curiosity, that small, quiet wondering turns into something they can't suppress anymore. It starts to press against their chest, to whisper in their thoughts. It becomes restlessness. And that's when it happens. The illusion of control begins to crack, and panic starts to rise. Here's where everything shifts. The calm they swore they wanted, it starts to shake. The silence they thought they controlled it starts to echo, and the space they asked for starts to feel like a void. This is stage 3. The internal panic. They won't show it. They'll keep their composure. They'll act normal, maybe even colder. But inside, their nervous system is on fire because for the first time, they're not the one controlling the distance. You are. They're used to being the one who retreats, the one who sets the pace, the one who decides when it's safe to reconnect. But now there's nothing to come back to. You stopped chasing. You stopped managing the connection. You stopped giving them emotional oxygen. And suddenly, they can't breathe the same. They start replaying moments in their head. Did I push too far? Did they meet someone else? What if they're really gone this time? These aren't conscious thoughts at first. They come like flashes, like anxiety that has no name. They'll distract harder. They'll work more. They'll scroll longer. They'll pretend it doesn't hurt. But every time they find a moment of quiet, that whisper returns. What if the silence means it's over? See, panic for an avoidant doesn't look like running toward you. It looks like running from themselves. It's denial dressed up as calm, but make no mistake, they feel it. Their control is slipping, and their old defenses aren't working. This is where many of them start testing the water again. A random, hey, a reaction to your story. A half-hearted message that says nothing but means everything. Don't mistake it for reconnection. It's a check-in for safety. They're trying to see if the bridge they burned is still standing. And here's where your growth gets tested. Because when you feel that ping, that reach out, every part of you will want to respond. To soothe, to fix, to prove you're still there. But if you answer from fear, you reset the pattern. You tell them it's still safe to disappear and expect you waiting on the other side. Your job in this stage isn't to chase, it's to anchor. Because every time you hold steady in the storm of their uncertainty, you're teaching your own nervous system something new. I don't need their attention to feel secure. And that's the most magnetic energy in the world, calm confidence. Because it does something to them that no speech, no text, no grand gesture ever could. It makes them feel something they've been running from their whole life: loss. And loss, my friend, is the beginning of awareness. That's when their mind starts comparing the next stage. When they start looking everywhere for what they already had and realizing they can't find it. Stage 4 is where reality starts to hum beneath the surface, the comparison trap. And it always shows up the same way. At first, they tell themselves they've moved on. They fill the empty space with new faces, new distractions, new noise. But no matter where they go, the same emptiness follows. Because here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud they're not looking for someone new. They're looking for someone who feels like you, but without the work, without the vulnerability, without the mirror you held up. And that doesn't exist. They'll talk to someone new and feel nothing. They'll flirt, they'll laugh, they'll pretend. But deep down, they'll start to feel the quiet difference that what used to feel like safety with you now feels like absence everywhere else. Because it's not you they were running from. It's the version of themselves they became when they cared. And you, by simply being consistent, by showing love without chaos, force them to feel that conflict. You made them see how good connection could be and how terrified they were to keep it. So now, as they try to distract themselves, the comparisons begin. Not with guilt, not with longing, but with confusion. They'll tell themselves, why can't I feel that same calm? Why does this new person feel off? Why do I keep thinking about someone I pushed away? Because the human nervous system remembers safety. It remembers the one who brought peace, not pressure. It remembers the one who didn't play games, who simply showed up. And when it realizes that peace is gone, the mind starts reaching backward, searching for it in the past. That's why the comparison trap isn't about replacing you, it's about realizing they can't. And that realization hurts. It cracks their pride. It dissolves the illusion of control. And it makes them face something they've avoided their whole lives, regret. You see, every avoidant eventually runs out of people to outrun. And when they do, they have to meet the one person they've been running from the entire time themselves. This is the turning point. The moment the silence stops being about you and them and starts being about them and them. And here's the irony. That's when they finally start to understand what you were offering all along. Not perfection, not possession, safety, presence, peace. They'll start remembering your steadiness, your calm, the way you didn't force, didn't beg, didn't crumble. And that memory becomes magnetic, not because you're waiting, but because you've already moved beyond it. Because peace has a vibration. And when someone finally realizes they destroyed the one place they ever felt it, something shifts deep inside. It's not attraction. It's not nostalgia. It's awakening. And that awakening leads them straight into the hardest part, the reckoning. The moment the story they told themselves no longer holds. The moment their pride and their pain finally collide. Stage 5, the reckoning. This is where everything that was hidden in their silence starts to speak. Because denial only works for so long. Control only comforts for a while. And distance, it only delays the truth. It never erases it. This is the moment their illusion breaks. And for the first time, they can't blame you. They can't call you too much. They can't say, you didn't understand. They can't hide behind their old story because your silence made sure of that. When you stopped explaining, you stopped feeding their denial. And without your words cushioning their fear, they have to face the weight of their own choices. At first, it comes as confusion. They'll tell themselves you changed. They'll tell themselves you moved on too fast. They'll look for a reason that makes them the victim. But underneath that story sits the truth they can't outrun. They lost someone who was safe, and safe doesn't come around often. Not for someone who spent their life building walls. This is the moment of reckoning, when silence turns from something they controlled into something that controls them. The same space that once gave them power now gives them perspective. The same distance that once made them feel free now makes them feel alone. And that's when regret begins to whisper. Regret doesn't start with tears. It starts with questions. Why did I leave? Why didn't I try harder? Why does it feel different now? It's not nostalgia, it's awareness finally catching up. And you have to understand that awareness doesn't always lead to apology. Sometimes it just leads to realization. Real growth isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, painful, internal, like a mirror finally showing the whole reflection. This is when they start to remember who you really were. Not the version they criticized when they were scared. Not the one they projected their wounds onto, but the calm, grounded, consistent soul who loved them without trying to own them. And that realization stings because when you're avoidant, what you fear most isn't losing others. It's realizing you lost yourself in your own defense. They'll feel that, even if they never say it out loud, even if pride won't let the words come out. They'll carry it in the pause before they text, in the silence before they sleep, in the ache that shows up when they see something that reminds them of peace and realize they traded it for control. And here's the beautiful twist. This reckoning isn't just theirs. It's yours too. Because when you stop chasing the version of them that doesn't exist, you finally meet the version of you that does. You realize you don't need their closure to heal. You don't need their apology to be free. You don't need to win them back. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. And when that awareness hits both sides, when they finally see what they lost and you finally see what you've gained, that's the real end of the cycle. Not the reunion, the release, because the silence you created didn't just change them. It changed you. It taught you that peace isn't found in someone returning. It's found in knowing you no longer need them to. That's the power of reckoning. That's where regret transforms into wisdom. And wisdom, that's what carries you into the next chapter, the one where your silence doesn't protect you anymore, it empowers you. While they're sitting in their reckoning, something incredible is happening in you. You don't see it at first because healing never looks dramatic. It's quiet. It's steady. It's one breath where you don't reach for your phone. One night where you don't replay the past. One morning where you wake up and realize you didn't think of them first. That's growth. That's power. See, while they were running from silence, you were learning to live in it. While they were avoiding their emotions, you were building emotional muscle. And while they were looking for safety out there, you were creating it in here, inside yourself. This is the stage most people never recognize because it doesn't feel exciting. It feels calm, peaceful, neutral. But neutrality after chaos is not emptiness, it's balance. It's the sign that your nervous system is healing. You start realizing your peace doesn't depend on a text, a call, or a reconciliation. It depends on the way you talk to yourself when the silence gets loud. You start catching your thoughts mid-spiral. You start reminding yourself, their distance isn't my fault. My worth doesn't shrink because they left. And then, one day, something shifts. You stop reacting to the silence. You start responding to your life again. You begin to fill the space with yourself, not with waiting, not with worrying, but with presence. You read the book you've been putting off. You go for the walk you used to invite them on. You start laughing again, not because everything's fixed, but because you're finally free enough to breathe. That's what integration looks like. You're no longer performing strength, you've become it. You're no longer chasing closure, you are it. And here's the most powerful part. You realize this whole journey was never about getting them back. It was about getting you back, the grounded, centered, self-trusting version of you that stopped shrinking to fit someone else's fear. This is when silence transforms from protection into peace, from defense into wisdom. It becomes the foundation you stand on, not the cage you hide in. So while they're waking up to their regret, you're waking up to your power. You don't need to prove your worth anymore. You're living it. You don't need to ask, do they see what they lost? Because you finally see what you found. This is your turning point, the chapter where you stop surviving them and start remembering yourself. And that's what sets up the final movement, the closing realization, where everything you've learned folds back into one simple truth. You were never waiting for them to come home. You were waiting to come home to yourself. Let's end with the truth that ties it all together. When you went silent, it wasn't about punishing them. It was about protecting your peace. And that, right there, is the foundation of self-respect. Because real self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It doesn't scream, "Look what I did." It whispers, "I know who I am." You didn't lose them. You released them. You released the pattern. You released the proving. You released the part of you that kept confusing effort with worth. And in that release, you met your own power. Now, you know that love doesn't have to mean losing yourself. That silence isn't emptiness, it's sacred ground. It's where you stop trying to be chosen and start choosing yourself. You see, there's a version of you that used to beg for clarity, for closure, for one more chance. And then there's the version of you who's standing here now, calm, steady, untangled. The one who doesn't chase peace anymore because they are peace. That's what self-respect looks like. It's not a wall. It's a doorway. It's the way you tell the world, I can love deeply and still honor my boundaries. It's how you say, without saying a word, my worth isn't up for negotiation. And here's the thing, nobody tells you, when you learn to love like that, grounded, calm, whole, you stop attracting chaos. You start drawing in people who meet you where you are, because the energy of peace is magnetic. So if you're in that silence right now, don't rush it. Don't break it. Let it breathe. Let it rebuild you. Because one day soon, you'll look back at this season of quiet and realize this wasn't the chapter where you lost someone. It was the chapter where you found yourself. You'll stop waiting for their message. You'll stop replaying the story. You'll stop needing them to see your worth because you finally see it yourself. That's what freedom feels like. Not the absence of love, but the presence of peace. So take a deep breath. You're not broken. You're awakening. You're not being ignored. You're being redirected. You're not waiting for closure. You are the closure. And when you stand in that truth, quiet, calm, certain, you'll realize the love you were waiting for was never about them finding their way back. It was always about you finding your way home.